Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of I'm Here Too, Mastering the Art of You, a conversation with Dana Bernstein. Among many things, Dana is a conflict resolution author, speaker, consultant, and principal of Dare to Live Brave. With over 2,500 coaching hours and more than 100 clients, Dana specializes in de-escalation, negotiations, contracts, project management, and high-stakes situations. In 2025, Dana published It's the Thought That Counts, Mastering the Art of You versus You, an interactive book helping individuals resolve internal conflict to better navigate external challenges. Dana and I got to know each other as part of the Rutgers Leadership Coaching for Organizational Performance program, and it was a real treat to get to sit down with her. As I think you'll learn during the conversation, Dana has a way with words, and I asked her to elaborate on a number of quotes that have resonated with me after reading her book and listening to some of her other podcast appearances, including, "The words that make you tick are the same ones that tick you off. Sometimes the mountains are there for a reason. If you're not vulnerable, you don't have the stickiness to grow, and you get to choose your hard." During our conversation, Dana also generously did some live coaching with me, shared her thoughts on how quieting the outside noise so that you can tune into your true inside voice and at your own pace is really important, shared some wild adventures and musical experiences that she's had, and somehow she did all of this without missing a beat, even when we got disrupted briefly by a technical glitch. If you want to witness someone living their values out loud and in the service of others, if you want to learn how to navigate in this fast-paced world, or if you're just curious about my least favorite food, then I think you're really going to like this conversation. Off we go. Enjoy. All right. Well, hi, everybody. Dana Bernstein, thank you so much for joining me on I'm Here Too.
I am so excited to be with you.
We're going to have a lot of fun. I want to start with your business name. So you are a coach, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But before we get into that, Dare to Live Brave. That's your business name, and it's also a very powerful mantra. So I'm really curious, how did you come up with it, and what are some of the ways that you put the idea of daring to live brave into practice?
Um, we were all talking about names for our business, and I couldn't think of any. And then I'm like, well, maybe I'll play with the initials of like my initials, DLB. And then I'm like, okay, well, what do I do with that? And as I'm driving home, literally, as I'm driving home from CVS, like I saw the word dare somewhere, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's a D. And then little by little, like I was thinking about it, and I have to thank CVS for that because I don't even know what they had going on that had that, but it just hit me as I was driving. And I happen to also be studying for my second degree black belt, which, yeah. So I was having all sorts of other stuff go on at the same time because the first time I did my second degree black belt, I failed it because my mindset wasn't good. And so I was trying to rethink my thoughts a lot. And it was in between all of that that it emerged.
And there it was. You said something about like your mindset. One of the things that came up for me when I was contemplating your business name was this idea of trusting ourselves and believing that we actually have the tools to figure things out. Now that's obviously a powerful thing to know, but like why is it so hard to do and how do we get better?
Oh, it's easy to do.
Tell me. Tell
This
me.
is the easy part. Well, so you have this fantastic set of attributes. You have your values, you have your best self, you have these wonderful gooey parts about you. When you identify it as a coach, that's what I help people do. When you identify that internal piece, she's the only one that matters. All that external stuff, blah blah blah, it's outside noise. What you do for a living, gym rat, attributes, whatever it is, right? Short, tall, whatever it is. that stuff doesn't define us. Our jobs don't define us. Our values define us. Our gooey pieces define us. And that person has always been with you as you overcame challenges, as you figured stuff out. You've always had your values there, your best self there. Those two working together have gotten you over every single hurdle. And if you trust that voice, those attributes that you can define, that's it.
That's it. So I know from reading your book, it's the thought that counts, that adventure is one of your values. Um, can you share a memorable adventure and why it's memorable?
The PG ones, yes. Um, well, and this was so funny because I was not expecting to move to France. Like it just happened. And I was in college and I had to take a language. And in high school, I took Spanish and like passed it by, I think, 1 point. It was like the skin of my teeth passing. And then my senior year, I'm like, let me take German. Loved it. So my high school year, I took German. It was like me, a tall me, and like all little 13-year-old freshmen. And we were all, and I loved it. We had such a good time in the German class. But then when it came to college, I had to figure out what language to take over the summer, so I wasn't going to like kill myself during this semester of taking a language because I didn't think it was my bailiwick. So I stood online at Union County College, and there's a really cute guy in front of me, and he picked French, so I picked French, and then there we are. And then after 6 weeks, I fell in love with the language. I was like, this is fantastic. I knew how to say my name. I know how to say I'm on a baguette. And then I thought I was well equipped to move to France. And I did. And it was fun. And then I realized I didn't know how to speak French. And then I just figured it out. And that was the best part, right? And so my mother and my father, they dropped me at JFK, and they're talking to all the other parents whose kids were taking French for like, I don't know, 6, 7 plus years. And my mother's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" So there's that. But my mom was really cute. She didn't think there was going to be enough food in France, so she packed granola bars for me in my big suitcase. And I came home with all of them because it's France. Like, you can't. Yeah. So that's an adventure. It was fun.
And so, where you talked about values kind of being with us always. Before that, I'm going to go to France thing. Were your parents surprised at this, or is this something that's been sort of consistently Dana?
Um, I think I've always been really independent. It came from childhood that I had some stuff happen when I was younger. I think um, my earliest memory of just being independent is my mom, who I love dearly, always late. She does not know how to read a clock. I promise you. I love her to death, but the clock thing is just not her deal. And so she was late picking me up from like nursery school or kindergarten or one of those, right? Early childhood things. And so I got on a random bus and I went home, but I didn't know what my address was. Yeah, so they had to bring me back to the school. Then my mother was eventually there, but I just figured I'll figure it out. And I think it started really early that, these values are with you. They show up every time you do something, every goal you have. Those are your values coming alive. And you can mark at different points in your life, if you look back, how your values have just been there. And you get to name them and then own them and then trust that voice.
Naming sounds like the easier, I won't say easy, but an easier part. It's the owning it and then trusting your voice, that I think it's that 3-step process that's really helpful.
Yeah, it's an exercise. You ready?
Yeah, sure. I've done some of it. I mean,
This might be an interesting one because it's in the book, but
yeah.
I was discouraged from putting this in the book the way I wanted to.
Okay.
But then I look back and I'm like, oh, I needed to do that. So, what is your favorite food?
French fries.
French fries.
Yes.
Okay. What food do you absolutely hate? Like you're gonna hurl when you
Celery.
what?
Celery.
Celery. So every time you're not choosing your you, you're eating like a big bowl of celery, and not even with some nice dressing on it, like plain old celery stuff, and maybe not even refrigerated celery, right? So just think about it that way. Every time we're not choosing our own selves, our values, our attributes, all that, we're eating the food that we don't like, because the thoughts that fill your head with are no different than the food to fill your stomach with. And you could choose, you know, which way do I want to go? Do I want to be my values, or do I want to compromise them? And sometimes you have to put one value in the back seat with a little duct tape on her, like, because perseverance will drive me a little bit batty. So she sometimes has to be in the no chair, and I'll have to lead with something else.
Hmm.
But they are never too far from the front seat. Or I could redirect perseverance towards like balance or something else, right? So, but I use these words with intentions, or at least my own values with intention. So I know who's driving.
So maybe if we stick to the driving metaphor, although I know you can come up with so many colorful metaphors, so maybe I won't restrain you. If we were to stick with driving, though, I mean, we are living in, like, I would say, like, the Autobahn, right? Where it's fast, it's change, there's things swerving in and out, there's technology shifting, geopolitics, financial, social, you name it, right? And we're driving our car, and each of us have a different reaction to the speed and the pace and the things that are sort of coming at us, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
how do we get more receptive to change?
But what you're talking about is a lot of outside stuff. The inside stuff doesn't change. That inside stuff will navigate change no matter what it is, no matter the speed, the geopolitics, all the stuff going on in the world. It really is just saying, I figured it out before, I'll figure it out again. Look at us during COVID. Band-Aid was ripped off, right? So
So, are there practical things? I mean, so sometimes, I think about it like when you in school you used to get a test and I'd look at it and I'd say, okay, like I have this very quick moment of panic, you'd feel like flushed, and then I'd like have to calm myself down and say, you've studied for this test, you're going to do your best. And then it's almost as if things got clear, like my blood pressure went down and my brain got to take over. Is that what you're talking about? Like, how do you quiet the outside and really amp up the volume inside?
you choose your inside voice. The outside, sometimes your voices, you have like little gremlins going on in there saying, I can't do blah, blah, blah. That's the trigger. A little duct tape, back seat, or sit next to me while I'm doing the thing. But exactly like you did with the test. I could do this. I could figure it out. You've figured everything else out in your life. You have not been as successful as you are without figuring out your stuff. And all those missteps that you've made, all the times you've fallen down, those were all learnings. You fall down, you get up. You're not staying down. You're actually, you've gotten up, you've figured it out. It'll be the same the next time, the next time, and the next time, no matter how quick the other drivers are on the Autobahn. And maybe they like to drive quickly, but you could be a grandma on the, doing your own thing.
I'm very much doing my own thing. I'm not a grandma, but I'm over there doing my own thing.
And that's me too. I'm happy when the people that I work with and all, they're successful. That's the point. I'm going to do my little thing. I'm going to cultivate my little garden. At the end of the day, when I look at my garden, they're going to be my flowers.
And I think you're getting at this is like a question that I have a lot, and it's sort of a two prong. One is, how do we stay focused on what matters to us? Like how do we keep tending that garden? But then also, how do we build connection with others and show that their gardens matter to us?
That's all using that best self. Right? So community is one of my pillars, as you know. And I have a little, I work at Rutgers. And I have my little coaching community that I love, up and down and sideways. And it's like I'm planting seeds of goodness all over the place. And I love building that. It's just one of my favorite things to do. And then I have my ICF community. I do a dance class now, so I have my little dance community we go. my karate community. So there's lots of things that I just use the word community and passion, and that leads the way. And maybe for you, I don't know what your pillars are, but we could do a pillars exercise and figure those wonderful pieces of you out. And then you would use those attributes to make the garden not only your own, but change the world as you do. Because you are change maker in the world. You do help people. But having those words that make you that best self is really critical because then you do it with intention. It's not just well, I want to be my best self today. Well, who is that best self?
Do you have a shortcut pillars exercise like the values one we did?
Shortcut pillars exercise. Tell me a time when you were the happiest ever.
Ooh, let's see. I like a big high five, like when I've been part of a team and I've been able to see us achieve something really together.
Why? Who are you being in that moment as your
In some ways, maybe I'll go back to like playing tennis. I love tennis as a team sport because you get to be singularly accountable for your own results. So there's this idea of I can control an outcome, but then you're not alone, and then you can be with other people because all of your scores together add up to whether the team wins or loses. And to me, that's like when the fun happens.
okay? As you are either playing tennis or doing your happy place, right? That teamwork place. You have these outside attributes. You're a great coach. You're great. You have certain height. You have glasses on. Outside stuff, some sort of degree. Blah blah blah. Who are you being in that moment if you just took all of that stuff away?
I just took all of that stuff away. I'm being helpful. I'm being supportive. I'm being encouraging. It's almost like a little bit of a cheerleader element there. I'm being useful.
Mm. Okay, so inside pillars are somewhere around the helpful, supportive, encouraging thing. We'd have to work on the words and see which ones are the best, or if not, it's all of them. The other things that I wrote down, and I'm not sure if it's a value or pillar, are impact, integrity, connection, and teamwork. And I'm not sure if you get annoyed if other people don't have teamwork, because if you get annoyed if other people don't, it's a value. But if it's just you as that best self, like if that's like the jacket you wear, that's like the gooiness of you, that's a pillar.
Thank you. Helpful. And then I think the third part, maybe I'm jumping the line here, is the ideal emotion, right? Like how so there's our values, the sort of thing that if somebody annoys us, it's like you're getting at my core, you're offending my whole like core.
Mm-hmm.
Get to the pillars, the things that you are when you're being your ideal self. And then it's sort of all in service of how we want to
Yeah,
feel.
every day. Yeah. So what would you want to feel every day? Okay. At what level? So on a 1 to 10, 10 being the most calm, what is realistic on a daily?
Oh, maybe a 7.
Okay. So every time you're not feeling a 7, look at your values and your pillars. We didn't yet do the values then, but look at the words that make you you and see what needs to be dialed up. If you're a 5, sometimes it's a 5 because it's a bad day, or if it's a 2 because it's a bad day. But on a normal day, if you're not a 7, there's something going on. And start taking a look at the words that make you you and see what needs to be fed. So maybe you have to dial up helpful, but face helpful inside and outside. Same with encouraging. How do you encourage yourself like you did on the test? How do you encourage others? How do you be helpful for yourself and put yourself on that list of important as much as you do other people? So use your pillars just like a tool to remind yourself who you are and ground yourself in that truth.
So we just did a little bit of real time coaching. And we know that you're a coach, but you're also an author, as I alluded to. And it's one thing to coach, it's another thing to write a book and put it out into the world. What led you to write the book?
I was bored. I really was. One of my clients said, do you have these exercises in writing somewhere? And I'm like, no. And then I was talking to one of the Rutgers coaches, and I was like, see, we were doing the reciprocal coaching to get the hours and all that. And I said, I think I'm just bored. Like I need, I'm going too wide and not deep enough. Like I had my eggs in so many baskets, and I wasn't focused. And I said, maybe I'll write a book. And that's what happened. And that's how it started. And then I made a slide deck, which was the original book. It's like 200 slides. And I had memes, and then I had all this copy in PowerPoint. It was the notes section. And it was horrible, apparently, because eventually I put it into Word document, and then there was a lot of overlap. So anyway, I realized I'm not a good writer. I want to maybe take a class in English so I can learn how to write properly. But that's how it started.
So there was, at any point you could have said, the client could have said, do you have this in writing? You could have said, no, I don't. Let's just keep going. You could have had the PowerPoint, looked at it and said, okay, well, this is not a book. This is a very long presentation. And then you could have even, as you said, like acknowledged, well, maybe I'm not the best writer, but through all of those, you still have this, I'm going to pull it up. You actually have like a physical thing in the world, your book. So how did you get yourself, were those troughs, or were those just like, these are just, scenic routes on my adventure toward writing a book and
I was
publishing?
just having fun. I mean, literally, I was just like a pig in, it, it, it was so much fun. And I was writing things down. I was making connections, and my coaching was getting better. And I shut the world out. And my family wasn't always so happy with that, though. But I shut the world out, and I was just playing. And I had different editors along the way. I had different voices helping me, sometimes not always helpful. And it's just one thing after another. I had the Rutgers coaching crew jumping in, looking at chapters. Some of them were like, this is horrible. What are you talking about here? And then I'm like, fantastic. Now I can make it better. So I was just having fun. And then there were dips, and it was frustrating at points because, life happens. And then I had to figure out how to do the thing. And then I figured out how to do the thing. So perseverance she was at the wheel most of the time, along with adventure, and sometimes a little bit too overextended because it locked me in a box of just doing. And then I realized that I had to dial her back at the end. So that was that. But I was watching all my players do their thing, and I was studying myself as an idea for like what happens when you get upset, like what happens when I get upset. And it was interesting to see that my pillar of peace is the center of everything, and like independence will block and tackle, and personal, like all these other players in my mind are always protecting the pillar of peace. And that's what I realized writing the book. So it was fun.
Do you have a sequel in mind?
No, but I was thinking that if all kids had this and figured out their best self, and it would probably be like 5 pages and they'll figure it out. If all kids can find out their best self, the WHO assessment, like how much better would the world be? Like they would grow up without the craziness of outside voices telling them this or that, and they would just rely on their humanness to make those connections and build it. So maybe.
It's funny you mentioned kids, because you did talk about a sense of play, and I think you and I share that. It's really important to have a sense of play even when you're doing hard things. But there's this Sesame Street song, and I haven't watched Sesame Street in a really long time, but I have nieces. And there's this one that begins, I wonder, what if, let's try. And it's focused on problem solving. And so I try to actually remember it because it's very easy. Like, I wonder, what if? let's try. Um, how can we cultivate curiosity? Maybe young people are very curious, right? But sometimes, whether it's feedback or these voices telling us, don't ask that question, you're going to look dumb, or you're like, how do we help cultivate that as leaders or managers?
You dial up the best parts of you and allow other people to dial up their best parts of themselves. And it's making a choice and understanding. I think what stops us is when we get upset, right? There's that the rider and the elephant analogy, and when the rider is that logical brain, the elephant are the emotions. And when that elephant gets so big, it crowds out the best parts of ourselves. And sometimes we don't consider alternatives. We don't have different perspectives because we're on that one track thought. And that one track thought is feeding the elephant like celery. And that's probably not the best thing. And that elephant's going to get really big on celery. And then that takes up all the thinking room. So I think when we are our best selves, we shine differently in the world and we help our people who work for us be better and different. But when that elephant is just so loud, like you can't see anything else but emotion, and then that's how you lead. Probably the worst leaders that you have are the ones that are just consumed with upset.
And there are other emotions I'd imagine that help feed that elephant, right? Like our insecurity, our fear, our, you know, ego. I don't want to use that in a negative word, but essentially an inability to see others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. These are all thoughts, right? When your thoughts feed the elephant, you're going to get what you get, either on the positive side or the negative side, where you're going to get to the ideal emotion of calm. The elephant's going to be all feeding it, oh, I'll be fine on this test. This will work out. And the elephant's like doing its thing and it's great. Or you could feed the elephant other thoughts and see how it works. It's a choice.
It is all a choice. And I've been, in preparation for this conversation, I did not finish the book, but I did start your book, as I said. And I also was listening to some other podcast interviews that you've done. And it strikes me that you think you're not a good writer because you are very evocative. You have very evocative phrases and ideas. So I've got four that I have sort of curated, and I basically am just going to say them, and then I'm curious if you can just elaborate. Does that
Okay.
work for you?
Perfect.
Okay. So one that stuck out for me was the words that make you tick are the same ones that tick you off.
Yes, exactly. We don't get upset unless that internal identity is whacked. Like the things that bother you, I'd be like, really? Why would that bother you? And you'd look at me in the same vein and say, Dan, why would this bother you? And it all comes down to that internal identity, the words of your values, your pillars, and the trigger, all that. When that is hit, that's the only reason you get upset. It's like 10, 15 words, thematically, obviously, but it boils down to a very small amount. And when you could look at conflict and break it into two, that's the goal. So you have internal conflict, external conflict, right? And when the external conflict is the how to do something, put that aside because we all figured out how to do something. It really comes down to why do you think this thing is an issue at this particular moment? And that internal identity is getting impacted somehow. So if you look at the words of that internal identity, you could pretty much figure out why you're upset. Were you not doing teamwork like you like to do? Were you not being helpful? Or maybe you were out of integrity with something, right? So those words you look at and say, okay, what is thematically going on in my life right now that I'm not being my me? So,
And you mentioned kids earlier. It almost feels also like in parenting. I'm not a parent, I know you are, but I can just imagine it's fun now because my mom, as you know, we both went through the Rutgers LCAP coaching program at different times. But when you're younger, sometimes your parents will say, "Well, why are you so upset about that?" Or you'll say, "Well, why aren't you more upset about this?" or vice versa. And sometimes that disconnect feels so big.
it comes down to values or the trigger being hit, right? But that's usually what happens is that That's why conflict is made up, because we could look at the same exact situation and have very different ideas about why we're bothered or we're not bothered.
And I know you have a background in contract negotiation and conflict resolution. And I was thinking back to contracts class in law school and this idea of the meeting of the minds, right? And they talk about a cow. And it's kind of like, if you don't have the same idea, then you don't have an agreement. And yet so much of our misunderstandings or, cross purposes is we assume we have an agreement and we don't stop to pause and actually, are you
Check
thinking
in.
about a cow or am I thinking about like a zebra? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And we do that in life all the time. That's why there's misunderstandings. When there's a misunderstanding, do we stop and clarify? Do we check in with ourselves to say, well, maybe it was something I thought. Maybe if I flip this thought, look, the issues you had when you were 10 years old are no longer issues. So you rethought the thoughts, even thoughts from last year you rethought and said, well, let me look at this differently. Maybe with a little time and space, I could figure this out differently, right? We don't carry everything from the past with us. So conflict is just a construct in our mind. And the words that make you tick, that's where you start.
All right. On to the next one.
Mm.
Sometimes the mountains are there for a reason.
Oh, geez. I am living that in now. So, yes. So look at all the mountains in front of you. They tell you things. They literally will tell you things. Maybe you're not supposed to be where you're at now. Maybe look at it differently. There's a reason for all of it. And just, it's a little woo woo, but I like to look at the mountains as an opportunity. And sometimes I don't like the mountains in front of me because I'm just not wanting to climb it. But on the other side of it is there's a freedom. And you don't know about what's on the other side until you get there. So you got to trust yourself that you got the legs and the gumption and the blah, blah, blahs to move you from point A to point B.
So many mountains, and so many hills and valleys too. So
It's all about the learning. It's highs and learnings, not highs and lows.
ooh, highs and learning. That's another one. Well, so highs and learning. Learning takes a lot of ability to not be good at something. So this brings me to the next one that jumped out. If you're not vulnerable, you don't have the stickiness to grow.
Yeah. I mean, growth is all in the sticky moments. So there was a story, and a famous author wrote this. So there's a butterfly trapped in a cocoon, and someone came along and cut the cocoon, and the butterfly flew out and it flapped its wings for a minute, and then it just died. Exactly, sad butterfly. But the butterfly needed to be stuck in that cocoon to get the wings stronger and to keep batting those wings on the inside of the cocoon to figure out how to fly when it got out. And so that's the sticky stuff. And if you're okay being in the in between or comfortable being kind of in the in between, which is not always so great, your wings will get stronger. Those wings will fly. When you're ready to get out of the cocoon, it'll just figure it out and you'll do what you've always done.
So, in terms of vulnerability, I would imagine all of us have tools to become more comfortable being vulnerable. Are those tools different based on either our values or our pillars, or how do you think about like getting comfortable with being vulnerable?
It's just putting everything aside and really getting, like you said in the beginning, trusting yourself. Trusting yourself that you will figure it out. And it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to not know and it's okay to do all the things, right? Because you would trust me to be reading something maybe that you were a little nervous about putting in the universe. So there's always a person that you can trust. You can trust yourself, but you might be able to find another person. And then you gain the confidence. Sometimes it's an inside voice, sometimes it is an outside voice. Sometimes we need those outside voices. Sometimes we can just rely on our own voice to say, we got this. I can find resources, but we'd all be robots if we're just not vulnerable. Like,
Yeah.
we couldn't grow without vulnerability.
So growth in some ways is, I mean, growing pains, right? Some of our growth we do not choose. Like things happen to us and we have to kind of learn the lesson. But one of the things that jumped out, you said you get to choose your hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And we could reframe that there are things that happen to you to maybe the thing is happening for you. And you get to choose your heart. It's another famous saying. It's communication is hard, but not communicating is equally hard because you're having that communication inside, right? So choose your hard. Dieting is hard. Not, being healthy is also hard. Choose your hard. No path is easy. Budgeting is hard. Being in debt is hard. Being married is certainly hard. Being single, people, is hard. Being divorced is hard. So all of these things are hard, quote unquote, but you get to choose which hard is going to get you to the end result. There's no easy path when you're trying to go over a mountain that has a lot of rocks and bumps and bruises around, right? But but eventually you'll get to the other side of the mountain and you'll figure it out and you will be that much better for it. But getting to the other side of the mountain, whichever way you go, is you get to pick which hard is going to get you there. And there's no wrong choice either, right? Like if it's a choice that you're making, then it's a choice you're making.
That really that resonates because I remember I was in a role that I was sort of not, it was sort of coming to the end of its usefulness in terms of what I wanted to do. And I remember getting an opportunity that felt like, okay, this is a fast way off of this mountain and I can go do this thing. And Hillary, my wife, she actually used mountain language. She said, Ara, is that getting you closer to the next part of the mountain that you want to be on? And, I was really annoyed at first. I was like, well, I don't want to be on this part. So I got to like go somewhere. Like, why are you telling me to stay still? And, we hike a lot and we've hiked in Switzerland. And I think her being able to sort of use that language that sort of put my mind in an active mode, in a concrete place and space, even though I didn't appreciate it at the time, I did hear her and I did listen and I did stay where I was. And that allowed, and I'm woo woo too, it allowed the next opportunity to be much closer to what I was actually seeking. It gave me more courage, I suppose, to speak out loud what I wanted, not what I didn't want.
Exactly. And you labeled and framed. And then as soon as you labeled and framed, the elephant maybe got a little calmer. Maybe not to the 7 that is your ideal, right? But it'll get to a point where it decompresses enough where you could breathe and say, okay, I have my wife, I have a plan, I understand the mountain, you figure it out, and then you go.
I'm so curious about your career journey as a series of steps because I mean, you can start wherever you want, but how did you get to this place? Because it's involved lots of things, including a veterinary practice.
Yeah, I just kind of followed my heart and then I ended up in all different spots that I wasn't expecting. So I had no real career path or aspirations. I just tried stuff, and then if I liked it, I stayed. And then I would try other stuff, and then I liked it or I stayed. Or there was a mountain in the road, and like someone told me that I had to be budget director, and I called my mother up and I cried, and I was like, I don't like math. Like, why would they do that to me? And then I started learning how to use an Excel sheet, and then I was like, wow, this is fun. And when I found it to be fun, then I was just loving it, loving it. And it prepped me for owning an animal hospital because then I had to come up with budgets for that. But if I didn't have that experience, I would have never been able to do, the veterinary, building a hospital. I just wouldn't. Um, so I was just I was just following fun, really, which sounds so like non-career pathy kind of advice to give to anyone.
Well, I mean, we spend a lot of time in our vocations. And so if we're not going to have some amount of fun, not every day is fun, right? But it's hard to sustain something if you're not having fun on some level.
But I've always had fun at my jobs. I mean, I can rarely remember a day. I mean, okay, there are individual days here and there, but I don't stay if it's not fun. And that's it. Is this coaching that I'm doing fun? Building this LCOP community, fun. My colleagues at work, fantastic. Fantastic. Right. So as soon as it becomes not that, then I have to say, why is this mountain here? Where do I need to shift? How do I need to branch out? How do I need to try something new? But it's been, that's where you trust your gut. When you're calm, with you being calm, right? That calm will tell you where you need to be.
So much of what we've been talking about requires being able to listen and pause. I think you say pause, ponder,
Ponder and pivot.
pivot.
Yep. Yep. So the mountain is there, and automatically you have a reaction, right? And your wife said, just breathe. And then that space is that pausing, right? And then you have the pondering, like what's going on. And then only when that elephant is not eating celery, they're eating french fry, can they pivot to that best self. That's the beauty of it. But you can't pivot unless you've done the first two. You can't be yourself, your best self, while you're stuck in an emotion.
Right. And so much of your book is really premised on helping us when something happens, right? It is that
Yeah.
when you're in the grip, or it's giving you the tools to be able to navigate when something happens, which is when we are usually at our least able, right? Yeah.
Yep. And it's all the inside stuff, right? It's never the outside stuff. The Autobahn's doing its Autobahn thing. It's not going to not be the Autobahn. But I could choose to, go to the rest stop, look at the flowers, do many things, but I don't have to drive on it at the speed of which everyone else is. And it's okay that they pass me, hopefully safely. But I have to run my own race, and I'm in competition with no one but myself. And when I quiet all the outside stuff, that's what I'm left with. And I have very little outside stuff that I allow in at this point. I'm getting old, so old people are like, forget it, I'm not doing it. But it's nice. And if you don't like where you are, you're not a tree, so you can move. Right? That was a famous saying by, I don't remember the person. I'm so bad at that kind of stuff. But it's a famous saying.
Was it Merton?
I'd have to Google it.
Yes, I don't know. Our audience will do that. While they're doing that, I want to stick to you because you're the interesting person today. Lightning round.
Yeah.
So this is when I ask sort of a consistent set of questions to each of my guests. So the first one is about preoccupations. So the way that I think about preoccupations, it's something that I'm borrowing from a creative writing course that I took in college. And it's basically to help us identify the things we often come back to over and over again, the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell others, and the stories we create for others to consume, whether it's as, professional writers or just people telling stories. So sometimes they'll start with things like, I love, I hate, I've always wondered, I wish I had, I hope I never. Some of mine include animal crime networks, ancestors, and work life integration. I'm curious about one of your preoccupations.
It's so funny because I'm either like like an all or nothing. Like my husband and I will binge watch 5 or 6 hours of a show and do absolutely nothing. And I am so cool with that. And then there are other days where I'm just working. Like I did 15 hours and I cleared out my entire garage, moved furniture by myself, did all the things, right? And I do this once or twice a year to clean out the garage. And then like I don't stop there. So I'm either preoccupied with nothing or something. It's usually it's usually not that blend of, balance. So balance is probably not in my vocabulary, which I don't know if I should strive for it or not.
My stepmom once said, forget balance, try happiness. And that was one of
Yeah.
the most freeing pieces of advice.
Yeah. Yeah. The weekend of Labor Day, I repainted my living room, dining room, and I don't use a roller, so I use a hand brush. So I did, yeah, exactly. My mom and husband were like, what the? And I'm like, and I paint all of, but it got done. It was like 12 or 14 hours, right? And then the next day I did the garage project. So I was just on a roll. I was just zip, zip, zip. And there were other days like this past weekend, like more TV than not.
We're going to get
Zero.
to TV in a minute. So we'll pause that. So basically you're
Nut.
an all
I'm
or nothing
nuts.
kind of person. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so this leads me to superpowers, right? One of the things I love is just, again, you talked about what makes us tick. So we each have something that we're really good at, that people seek us out for, that makes us stand out. And I'm really curious what you think one of your superpowers is.
Okay, this is going to be weird. So we're just going to go with it. But I could see time. Like I could, like everything is a time thing in my head, and I could figure out how to fit these things in different time slots to do the thing to get it done. And if I have like 80 things in a day, I'm like, okay, here's how the time is going to look. And then I'm able to actually see the thread of getting it done. It's weird. It's just, I don't know if other people could do this. I'm assuming they can, but I could see timelines really easily and put time and tasks together. So I'm good at that.
That's one of the things you've done, right? Project management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as a meeting planner, that's all I did. So I would come up with these long itineraries, and really they were long. Some of them were 30 pages, but it was the on site manual, and every minute was mapped out, and then you could see time just happen. And other people could then follow it and say, okay, these things are supposed to happen at this particular time. But it all made so much sense to me, and it was just fun. So I like to do that. I think it's kind of a superpower, but I don't really think about it too much. But
Sometimes the things we don't have to think about are indeed our superpowers. But I'm curious about that one because you're dealing with other people's ability to work within a sense of time. How is it? I mean, it's one thing to map it, and then are you able to anticipate where things might go and
yeah,
then
yeah,
shift?
yeah. Like my mother's always late. Love her, love her, love her. But I could set my watch to like all the things, and then I could figure out stuff to do while I'm waiting for her to be late to show up to the thing, and we don't miss a beat. And then I don't get aggravated because I already know what's going to happen because it's happened. We're all thematic. Life is thematic. We're thematic. So things happen in the same vein, and you just be like, oh yeah, this is how it is. We just go with it. My kids are late every morning doing their getting to school thing when they were little. I was like, perfect. I could fit in some sit ups. I'm not going to be aggravated. I'm just going to do things to fill in the time. And then it was all like a mapped out version of how it went.
That's part of what you were talking about, this idea of like, don't get swayed by the external. There's always a way to come back to center for yourself.
That's it. When you know what that center is, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, so this is an ask. So this podcast is about community. I'm hoping that I'm helping bring people together to learn, share, and be inspired. And you already given me a lot during this conversation, and I hope the audience has felt the same. But um, what's something that we can do for you?
Be good to yourself. Treat yourself with kindness. Whatever your internal words are, whether you get the book or you don't get the book, write down some things that just make you so you, and then allow yourself to swim in that. Allow yourself to wear it. Allow yourself to be kind to yourself. So often you're in service to other people or do things for other people, but face that inwards. Calm the elephant down, feed your soul, do what you need to do, whatever metaphor you want to use, all these mixed metaphors, which I got in trouble with while writing the book. My Donna, one of the Elcop sisters, was like, stick with one metaphor, please. Sometimes I'd have two in the same sentence. So, but be patient with yourself. Sometimes the chicken's not ready to get taken off the grill. So give yourself time, marinate, but be good to yourself, because at the end of the day, when you look back on your life, what are the thoughts you want to have about who you are as a person, and what impact did you have on the world, and is the impact that you want to have. So my ask is, find your pillars, face them inwards.
Love that. All right, this is how we're going to wrap up. There is so much content and not enough time. I love hearing that you and your husband can binge watch things. I am a similar. I can find time to, if I'm into it, I'm into it. So, what's something that you're reading or listening to or watching or all of the above that others might enjoy?
Well, I stopped reading while I was writing the book because I was just souped into that. And we're watching Doc right now.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen it.
I've
We
seen the
watched
first
her.
season. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we saw, and then it's on. They have two little episodes that just happened on the Fox.
Okay, so I saw the first, and then there was a long time frame, and so now the second episode is up.
Yeah, the second. Well, tonight's the third
Okay.
episode.
Okay.
I think my husband's going to be watching hockey though, so we'll see. But it's really good, and I think we did the whole first season in a weekend, maybe a weekend in like a day.
I can imagine. I mean, I won't spoil it for people who want to go watch, but it feels like the journey that the main character is on, and the fact that she has the friend who's the psychiatrist. On some level, there's a lot going on in that show that we have talked about. So, folks, if you want
Yeah.
to apply this conversation through pop culture, I do think Doc is a great lesson to add to the syllabus.
Yeah, that neuropsych, amazing. I mean, she just cuts right to that. I mean, it's laser. It's just wonderful. So I'm very well. I guess we're both enjoying it very much. But yeah, so that's the one binge, and then we probably have to find another one now that it's a once a week deal, because it's not going to satisfy the binging. The once a week doesn't work anymore. So we will find a second thing to watch and binge.
And then music. I know there's a little bit, before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about music. Do you want to share what you're listening to, or any musical interests, or the way that you're inclined?
Well, I wasn't a Slipknot fan, and now I am. So that's kind of weird, because I was like Elton John, Billy Joel kind of person. Um, and obviously Whitney Houston, she's from Jersey, fantastic voice. I mean, really, I mean, that was a gift. That was just a gift. But Slipknot, it's almost like it's like the sweet and the salty together, right? He goes into like, and then he's like, ooh, sweet. And it's a beautiful blend. Some of those, and the lyrics, fantastic. If you read I mean, because I try to like sing as quickly as he does. I still can't get the cadence down. So I have to look at the lyrics and then try to do it at home. And it's just not good. And no one can be home while I'm doing this, because I'm so awful at singing that's like, so everyone has to clear the house, and then I have to put it on and look at the lyrics. Wonderful. Some of those songs just brilliant.
So
Um,
Slipknot, for those of us who don't know, what genre and how did you discover Slipknot?
oh, my son was being stubborn. So I was surprising him with tickets to go and see them. It was like $25 over at PNC. And it was going to be a mother-son thing. We used to do the Poconos thing. My daughter would go to a Girl Scout thing. He and I would go. So we needed bonding time. Or at least I thought we needed bonding time. And I said, let's do this thing. It's $25 all in. And he said no. So I was like, well, what does he know? I'm going to get the tickets and I'll surprise him. He'll say no now, but he'll agree later. Well, he didn't agree later. And I have a master's in negotiation. So you know that I'm going to go at it until I can figure out how to get it done. And he was not having it, literally the day of. And I'm like, you've got to be flipping kidding me. And it was raining. It was after a rainstorm, so it was going to be muddy. And I was like, the hell with it. I'm going on my own. And I convinced a girlfriend. She ended up getting tickets. So I went with the two of them, stood out in some mud pit and loved it. And then I was like texting them all night. And then I was like doing the phone thing of saying, here, listen to the music. And I always think the gift to the kids is the ticket to go and not like a physical thing. So that's why they hate me so much, is because I don't do the stuff thing. I only do adventures. And I said, I'll buy you a t-shirt. What size? Since I'm already here. And we got it on the outside where it's like $10. And then I get home and he's like, I don't care. IDC. I had to look up what IDC is. IDC, if you go with me, but I would like to go another night. They're playing again. And at first I said no. And then I ended up talking to an L cop, and then I said, we'll just do it. And it was so much fun the second time. He didn't let me play in the mosh pit. No one has yet let me play. None of my friends who have gone, I've been to 4 Slipknot concerts. No one's let me play yet.
Maybe the 5th will be the charm.
Yes. If someone will go with me the 5th time, but I have to pick a young person because my friends are like fuddy-duddies at this point. They don't want to lose a tooth. I'm like, that would be that's when you have the stories, when you lose your tooth.
That is not an adventure I'm signing up for.
Well, your teeth are perfect. I had to get braces a second time.
Oh my goodness, Dana. Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate all that you've shared. I really, encourage folks. It's the thought that counts. And just like, as you said, being kind, being kind to ourselves. It's such a great lesson, reminder, thing to be heard. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and it's so good to see you.
Oh, likewise. All right. Soon again.
So,
Well, that's all for this episode of I'm Here Too. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. Please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss the next conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.